Okay, we are at the top of the hour. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to you all. Thank you for attending the Platform Analytics Academy today. If you're new, welcome. If you're returning, welcome to you as well. We'll get through some logistical information and then get right into our content. As usual, these are always for you. Try to bring fresh ideas, better understanding, practical guidance as much as we possibly can. And I think all three of those things will probably be achieved today. So looking forward to that. This is being recorded as usual. It'll be out in the community later on today or tomorrow, and also out on our YouTube channels as well. So please feel free to sit back and relax and enjoy. And you don't necessarily have to keep up with all of the Q&As that are being asked, because I'll make sure that I post those in the community article as well. So all that'll be there for you. So with Q&A in mind, please ask questions. But please utilize the Q&A. That is how I'm actually able to track those questions to make sure that we can get them into the community post as well. And then there are also panelists that are on this call that can answer questions via type if they can do that. If there's a question that comes that is asked during a certain section of what we're being covered today, and we feel like we need to stop and ask that, we'll definitely do that. But again, please feel free to ask those questions in the Q&A. You can say hellos and kudos and all those things inside of the chat, but the Q&A is where we want those questions at. Safe Harbor, just want to make sure that we mention this. I don't necessarily know how much of this will need to be used today, but we never know. So we just want to make sure that we make sure that you are aware of the Safe Harbor and adhering to that as much as possible. So my name is Thomas Davis, and I am the host, also a panelist as well. And Dan Kane, my coworker, is actually going to be presenting today. So super excited about that. And we also have Adam, Marta, and Olga. And I believe that we have a late Ching. Yeah, they're there, and I'll promote him in a minute. He is on as well. So looking forward to what we have today. And again, today we're going to talk about platform analytics, and we're kind of going to do a deep dive. So a few months ago or a few weeks ago, we actually did platform analytics filters. And this is to build off of that and actually go a little bit deeper with some different use cases and just some conversation around that. And hopefully it will generate some questions. So with that, Dan, you are definitely free to take over sharing, and we look forward to it.
So for today, it's actually I'm wanting to handle this one a little bit different than usual. There's certainly going to be some presentation part, but really what I want to do, I really see today is to do, hopefully, what I'm hoping to do is a lot more hands-on. Because this is really a pickup from the session that we did back in June. So that's one thing I would say is if you are completely brand new to filters and the whole concept of filters in the next experience world, the next experience or the platform analytics experience world, you you're kind of thrown off by what are we talking about here? Stay on here, absolutely. Stay on, listen, ask questions. But I would also recommend that you go back and review that session we did back in June as well, because this is really intended to kind of get into some of the use cases specifically. So again, I am Dan Kane. I'm partnered up with Thomas here. I'm a outbound product manager in the platform, particularly around the platform analytics world. And so what I want to do today is really kind of look at some use cases. So in general, I want to look, we're going to spend a few minutes looking at filter properties, just looking at just the properties that are available to you and anything that you might want to know about. The big thing I'm going to encourage you to do is ask questions, put in the Q&A, especially anything that is related specifically to that topic that we're talking about right now. As much as possible, I want to discuss those live unless it looks like it's just taking too much time. So that's what's going to be a little different today. So be prepared. I'm not saying if you absolutely don't want to talk, you don't have to, but be prepared for the possibility that we may ask you to come off mute and ask your question. Or what I'm really interested in is actually giving us some thoughts around what your use cases are for the different types of filtering that we can do within the next experience. And what we're focusing on today is within the inline editor. I'll have a quick link out to filtering on the technical editor on the UI builder version of filters, but really going to spend the really all of our time today on the inline editor version of filtering. So we're going to talk about filter properties, unified filters, the concept of it, cascading filters, multiple data sources, Q&A. Again, Q&A, please ask questions throughout, and we will try to stop and anything that's particularly relevant to what's going on in our discussion. So really do want this to be a lot more interactive. We're always interactive. I want this to be even more interactive than usual. I think of it almost more of like a workshop as opposed to a presentation. Because within each of these, we've talked about these topics before. But what I want to do is to go into these topics and just do some examples of it. Do some use cases for how you would use these. So just a reminder, again, from that session we had back in June, there is a link that I put the link on the page here. This will be, and as usual, this will be available out in the community along with this session when the recording gets posted. So that'll all be here. So we're carrying on from that session. So the first thing I wanted to do, actually, let's go back here, is just a little bit of a look at little deeper look at filter properties. So I'm going to change what I am sharing. Okay, so now you should be seeing a dashboard.
Yep.
All right, so we're talking about filters just in general, just a really quick overview for those, just kind of a little refresher for everyone. What we have is a dashboard that has a bunch of KPIs on them. But you notice it is a mix. You don't have the beautiful part now is that you don't, from a user perspective, they don't have to know or care whether or not any of these individual KPIs, whether it's a KPI that's an indicator that's done with performance analytics, or if it's just a real-time table query that's done kind of the traditional reports. So the idea is that if I select, I start a filter and I want to filter by, in this case, an assignment group, I can just say, yep, I want to filter by that assignment group, and everything on the page just got updated based upon that selected assignment group, except for this one at the very bottom. That's actually a special use case we'll talk about later. But you'll note that then each one of the data visualizations then identifies it as having a filter applied. And if I click on that, it'll tell me what filter was applied. So there'll always be you have a choice, you have an option as a dashboard designer to say, I don't want to show that filter icon, but I strongly recommend it. It's really useful to have. So just kind of that quick reminder of what we're doing when we're talking about filtering. I clear that, and let's go to edit. So what I wanted to walk through then is this. So I created this assignment group filter, and let's take a look at the configuration just to see what that's really providing us here. So so again, stop and ask if you have questions about any one of these properties. Please do ask. We really have to have the group of experts here to.
Can you show the multi-select version? The
Yes,
question about that.
absolutely. Yep. So the idea is I can choose the different types of filters. If I choose a multi-select and I save this, exit editing mode. Now it's a what do you call it, the kind of the old slush bucket environment. So I choose the groups that I want. I can say we have like an ITSM engineering. Oh, I didn't save the other one. Yeah, okay. So I have two selected, and it's telling me these are the two that are applied with my multi-select. And I can apply additional filters to I can apply a date range filter to say I just want to look at last month instead. And that's applying on top of, as much as some of the indicators, it's not going to do it the exact same way, but it's going to be trying to apply that filter to everything on the page. So it's going to be applying all those filters at the same time. On this, I did a setup of company, and I'm a company filter, and that's kind of one of my specific use cases I'm going to jump into in just a moment. But let's look at the real simple one here. The ITSM engine, the assignment group. So we have choice of multi-select, date, true, false. And the session we did back in June did go through examples of each of those. So I'm not going to I'm not going to spend a ton of time here unless there are, again, more specific questions about it. But then there's the UI element. So what visualization do we want? Generally, this is this particular one isn't going to be a real good use case for radio buttons, just because it's I would have to make this absolutely huge to take up all kinds of space, but it's an option. There are definitely cases where that could be a very useful, where radio button could be it's just a choice of, 2 or 3 options. But since it's potentially hundreds and for some customers, assignment groups can get into the tens of thousands, I'm going to keep it as a pill. So I put in a label. By default, there is no label. So I put in a label that's just going to appear as the header of this filter assignment group. Show values in pill. So again, I have all the help here. Show the selected filter elements inside the pill. So if for whatever reason you don't want to do that, I can do it more like this and say, I can have it look. So I can say, which assignment group did I want to be applying here? So so it's just more of it. It's just an aesthetic preference for that. So do I want to show the values in the pill? Yes. Now the critical part here is going to be the data and the data to filter. There's going to be a neat trick I'm going to show you in just a minute here as well. But what I really want to do is, what data do I want to filter? Do I want to use the data is saying, what is the source of the filter, not the source of the scores. In this case, could be incidents, could be problems, could be tasks. It's the idea is that this list of assignment groups comes from the group table. Now, there's a way that you can kind of play with this, and actually, what I could do, and I'm just going to kind of go back to, let's see, I'm going to remove this and make this. Let's say that for a lot of these, what I did is I said I just want to use the task table, because most of these are all tasks or extensions of the task table. And then from what field on the task table do I want to be applying? So again, I don't have to know that it was the group here, I guess is what I'm saying here. So as a user, I can just say, I want to filter the task table, and I want to filter it based upon the assignment group. When I apply that, it's just going to automatically, it knows to say, hey, the table that you're actually using as your source is the group table. And then you want to be applying the group table against the assignment group field on the task. So it can help you out with it. So it's nice if you do know the source table. Back in the core UI world, that was something that you had to really keep in mind. You had to really think about, is what is the source of my data, of the source of my options for my filters. Less so here. I can configure the values. So if I wanted to do further filtering, this could be a neat spot where you could potentially even do some at the filter level. I could say I could maybe do some dynamic filtering to say that, I want this to be just let's see. Actually, it wasn't this idea. That's not the one I wanted to use. Like I said, like the manager is dynamic, and then I could say it's me in this case. Now in this case, actually, it's the assignment group manager. So that's right. Is dynamic, and then I can just choose one of my pre-written dynamic filter options. So in groups I manage, for example, I can say, so that's one of my predefined. So then when I save it, it's going to modify that filter. It's going to modify this table. Sorry, they're going to modify this the filter source based upon, in this case, a dynamic filter. So that's a way that I can say I want to apply a dynamic or a personalized filter to an entire dashboard all at one time. So actually, I'm going to get rid of that because I don't want that to be here for this one for the moment. We mentioned the data to filter. Again, you can specify here that, in this case, it's a table. I want to be able to filter the task table. Now you notice I didn't specify because all of these data visualizations are based upon incident, problem, change, total open workload. These are all tables that are extended from the task table. So if I am going to choose the task table as my starting point, I want to make sure that I check this little box here that says apply to tables in the hierarchy. So what that'll mean is if I didn't have this applied, if I didn't do that and I wanted to save and exit and I tried to apply a filter, it's not going to apply it. It didn't apply anything, and so all the filters shall be 0 the whole way around. But I can really make things a lot easier on myself as a developer by saying, hey, I want to use the task table because that's the parent to all of these other tables, but I want to also apply this field filter to all of the tables that are extended from task. So now the difference is when I choose it, I choose one of my groups. All of the, everything, changes, problems, incidents, they're all filtered based upon my selected filter. All right, so I'm going to go through a couple of these. There's a default value. I can put in a default value. So it can be used if you want the user to open the page with some filters already applied. So it's another way you can say I want to apply a filter automatically to say that I want to do like a dynamic filter in here potentially. Following other filters I'm going to get to in just a moment. And then there's some advanced options on allowing the user to clear what your sorting direction. So if you don't want your user to be able to clear the filter, let's say that you by default put in a filter that gives them just that manager's groups. I can say that I don't want them to be able to clear it, that all they can do is see their own stuff. That's one of the things that this can do with that. So it's a quick look at the properties. Are there other questions on the properties before I jump into the unified filters concept?
I don't see any that are directly to the properties themselves, or more just general filtering type questions. So you're probably fine.
Okay, good. All right. So what I want to do next is talk about unified filters.
Yep.
Yeah. So what I'm doing with this, the real key to this, when I'm talking about unified filters, what do we really mean? Is it's really all about when I work with a filter, I just have my filters, I have my filter selected. I'm in the configuration panel for that filter. It's really based upon the data to filter. That's the focus here. So what data do I want? What data do I want to filter? So if I want to filter by more than just one table, or maybe a combination of tables and breakdowns, like the performance analytics breakdowns, this is where I would do that. So in this example, I'm using both tables and an indicator breakdown. And we're going to do that here in just a second. And then there's also, I'm also going to show you, I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier, the breakdown mapping is that the mapping magic, the one that we're going to do here. If the data to filter already exists as a breakdown mapping, the associated indicators are automatically filtered. So in other words, anything that, if this already exists as the task table in my breakdown mapping. The task table is there, mapping to the assignment group manager field. This still just says it's a table. It doesn't say anything about it being an indicator breakdown. But if I'm applying it, if that already exists as a breakdown mapping, it's going to just automatically apply it to that. It's going to automatically apply it to all the indicators that have that breakdown on my page. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to add a filter. For this one, I'm going to make it, putting in a new filter, I'm going to call it, notice there's no label. The label is just label by default. I want a manager, and then I need to add my source. So I want to add my source, and I want this source to be, again, based on the task table. I want to be filtering data from the task table. And from that table, I want it. Now, if I wanted to, I could make it be like the opened by manager or the assigned to manager. But in this case, I'm going to make it based upon the assignment group's manager and apply that. And again, notice it just automatically identified. It says, yep, that's the data. That's the score you want to filter, and this is the source of the filter. Again, I can go in and do some more filter. I can filter further with this if I want to. So if I start that, so now if I just save what I've got, that's all a basic filter. That's all I really have to do. And so when I save this and exit my editing mode, now I can say, look at the managers here, and we've got old Fred, of course, Fred Luddy, our founder. It's going to try to apply, and notice here it did for it has the open, so for the indicators, it did apply Fred as a filter, Fred as the manager, to say, if I look at this open backlog and I look at the actual records, it's going to be just the records that where the groups report up to Fred. But it didn't do my real-time table query. So again, this particular one was just based upon the incident table as opposed to an indicator. What's happening here is that same issue I talked about just a moment ago, and that is when I say I want to select, so if I say with this one, the table that I want to the filter, I said assignment from the task table. It by default did not choose to apply it to the tables in the hierarchy. So if I apply it to the tables in the hierarchy, and then save everything, now everything is filtered by Fred Luddy. And so let's clear that off. Back in my edit mode. So it's really doing everything I want, and I didn't even specify that I was filtering indicators. This is just because the indicators that I have in these data visualizations are already mapped to that same task table assignment group manager. They're already mapped. You don't have to know that, but if you don't see them, if I see that it's only applying a filter to my table queries, then I can have the option to say I want to add indicators, and I can specify. What this is saying is I want to filter indicators. So what breakdown from the indicators do you want to apply? So I could say, and if I want to see all indicators with this breakdown, I can even click on the button to see, click on the link to see what indicators are actually part of that. So it gives up the list of that, but I can apply that. And now I have both, I'm filtering both a table and PA indicators with the same filter. And I could keep adding more tables. I can just keep adding. So if I want to ultimately, let's say if there was the CI, if there was somehow a manager field that was linked to the CI, I could, the CI by class down here, I can do that. I can say I want to apply it to CIs. Let's see, table. I get way too many of these tables. So. Okay, there we go. And I'm just gonna play with it here. I'm just gonna choose one. Because I don't think there's any actual good data that's let's see, let's do something like this and say maybe it's the assigned tos manager. But the idea is you can be variable with this. And again, you can say that with I want to apply it to tables in the hierarchy. So the idea is any one of my data visualizations that uses this table as its data visualization source, it's going to try at least to filter based upon whichever manager I select up here. I think there's another one here that I think it's going to come back to me with. Yeah, so it says nope, for that particular manager, no data. So it did filter it, but it's saying there's nothing there that matches it. So I can apply this, and this will apply. Right now, I've only got a single tab. It's only a one-tab dashboard. If there were 10 tabs on this dashboard, as long as I put this filter in the top part, so if I add another, wrong button, if I, oh, nope, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to add another tab. I just wanted to add a tab to it. I'm going to do that. But if I want to add my tab to this, I'm going to have multiple tabs, and I can say, do I want this filter to apply to the entire dashboard or just to this one particular view I'm on right now? Okay. So that's just a kind of a quick look at the multiple data sources that I'm filtering for. Any questions on that before I look at the idea of kind of using the cascading and or following
Then
others?
just a quick question. It was a bit
Yeah.
generic things. Can you
Mhm.
show on the date range filter how to set up the predefined conditions, like the default, like relative date ranges?
Oh,
To talk
yeah.
about the different views we have on the configuration and how to this.
That's a good question. I'm glad you mentioned that because this is a different, because it has different options for this type of filter. It's my default value when I select the date range. If I want to specify, let's say that I want to by default say it's the last 3 months. I want that to be, and I can again do I want to allow the user to make any clean any of that at all? I can do
The one
that.
setting, just the one setting above this, where you have the date filter view and then the select predefined ranges just above it or below it. You can show that one.
Oh, this one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I see what you're saying. So what choices I want to have available. Okay. I see what you're saying. So if I want to add to this, if I want to add additional choices, this is just the default list. But I can
It's
say,
pretty much all the options you have, like in the standard, in the list, in the relative conditions. So you can choose. You have some set by default, and you can choose any of this depending on your conditions. Maybe if it's small data, you can do like minutes and hours. It's about big things, it's months and quarters. And you can choose on the view itself, in the date filter view, you can choose whether you want to just see the calendar plus date range, or you only can only relative ranges or only calendar. So default view is both. You have this relative ranges and just a calendar where you can select dynamic from to.
yeah.
So this is the configuration. So it's general basic calendar, so the Gregorian calendar. So you don't have configuration at the moment to choose allow dates, so like block dates in the future or change the view. So for now, you just have those kind of few options available to configure.
Good question I've got then. Could this apply to a business calendar, like a fiscal calendar? or
The
no?
business calendar is not yet in the
No.
another version.
I was actually replying to the question right now. We worked in Yokohama on supporting the business calendar for the date filter. So should be out with Yokohama.
We'll have more options in Yokohama and the safe harbor, which Thomas showed nicely in the beginning.
Yep. I knew we'd get to something with that. I knew there had to be some
Yes.
context for the safe harbor. Okay. Any other questions that we can answer live that would be really good ones to answer with the group?
Hey, Dan, I know that this is
Yeah.
related, but I think it'd be really simple for you to show real quick. Can you just show how you add a tab?
Let's see if I can. I was just going here to my add. Oops. I'm going to use the excuse of I have an injured finger. That's my index finger. I have a hard time. I can't use my index finger on my mouse right now. So I get a little wonky with scrolling.
Yeah, so simply just clicking the add a tab like Dan did there gives you the ability to add a tab. And you can see here that he can move those filters up above all of those tabs, which means that it will reflect everything that's on the dashboard. But if he had a specific filter that he wanted at a tab level, for example, if he didn't want that date range at the top, he's leaving it directly on that overview tab. So that's how you add tabs, and then the fact that you can move them around and be specific about where you want them. So thanks, Dan.
Because I know that was one of the really big asks. So when I go, so I'll say on the overview, I've got the date range. When I go to my other tab, not there. So.
And Dan, just to make sure, this is Xanadu that you're actually demoing on, right?
This one is actually Washington.
Okay.
I have a Xanadu instance, but this had I'll be sorry,
This had better data. I get it. Yep.
Had better data. So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. We always have that little that lovely caveat to say whether we've got decent data.
Yeah.
Okay. So
You're
what
good.
I want
Thanks.
So I want to talk about next then is, if you remember back in the world of, I'd say, back in the core UI world, you could set up cascading filters. The really cool part about cascading filters was that that you could, I'm going to go to here. The really cool thing about cascading filters is that you could have it all show up in one box, but it was only relevant to interactive filters, which means it's only relevant to reports or live or real-time table queries. So, but what I want to do with this, and it was pretty complex. If you had 3 or even 4 levels of cascading, you really had to put some heavy duty thought. And to be honest, I had to do a lot of trial and error to get my cascading filters to work exactly the way I wanted them to. Now it's much more straightforward. All we're going to do is just simply identify what are the other filters that you want to follow. That's really all it is. So it's much more basic. So when I select one of my filters, my configuration options are, and you notice it can go either way. Within my configuration options for that filter, it's going to show me any filters that are either directly connected, in other words, have the exact same field, or if there is potentially one or more fields that can link the 2 filters together, the source table. So in this case, this is the users table, this is the groups table, because this was table user as my filter source. So if I say that I want to follow the assignment group, there's more than one possibility. There's more than one possible combination of tables that would link these together. So it says, which table do you want to use to base this relationship? So in this case, I want it to be based upon the group member table. So it's going to let me follow an assignment group. Now that almost seems backwards, because this case, I could pick an assignment, but the idea is that I could pick an assignment group, and then in the manager, it will only show me the manager of that assignment. It'll only give me the option to show the manager of that assignment group. And I can do the same thing with any other filter. So in this case, with the assignment group filter, it's going to do the same thing. Do you want to follow the manager? Yes or no? Sure, why not? And again, this asks me what table do you want to use as the basis for the relationship between the user and the assignment group? Yeah, it's the group member is what I want to do for that. So it's going to be following, and it is telling me I like this. We have a lot more information. I know that's usually one of the concerns in the past is that there wasn't not a lot of information available when some options weren't there, when some options weren't available. We're trying to make this much more transparent for you. So to say, in this case, I have a couple of filters that just cannot be followed on this because there is no relationship between the assignment group and the date range. No relationship between the assignment group and the company. If I added a company field to an assignment group to the assignment group table, I could then absolutely create that sort of link. But right now that doesn't exist. I would have to set up my data tables to be able to do that. And you can go as many levels as you want. The only thing I would say, the only thing you lose from the legacy core UI is it all doesn't show up visually in one box. Although if you want to, you can still kind of stack these if you want to. You can still do any kind of thing that you want to do with it. And however you want to show this visually, whatever's going to work best for your users. So now, because right now, if I just choose an assignment group, I've got every single assignment group in the system. But if I select Fred here again as my manager, now I'm only going to, does Fred not? Okay, I thought Fred was on a couple of these. Yeah, it just took a moment. And it's even telling me it's filtering by the manager value. So now these are the groups that Fred is the manager of. And if I don't want that, I can say instead, let's actually go the other way around and say, actually, let's go back to Fred here for just a second and remembering what his groups are. So, network was one of his groups too. Okay. So I can clear my filters, and I said it was a two-way street. So I can choose the network group, and again, it's going to filter all my data based upon that. And Fred is saying that, yep. So in this case, you don't have to know who the manager of the group is ahead of time. You can just say, pick the group or pick the second layer of the cascading filter, and then it will tell me what or who is the first layer of the cascade. Then you can keep going down further layers on this. Were there any questions on those? It's a quick look at it, but this is our time if anyone wants to kind of dive into this a little deeper on these cascading filters, this is the time to do it.
Trying to look at these questions here. We have
Peripherally related.
said, how about selecting more than one group?
Yeah, okay. So first thing I'd have to do, so kind of what's the first thing I would have to do on this? I have to change the filter type to a multi-select. So now I have the option to say I want to multi-select. And let's see, and then so now if I set ITSM engineering, network, so I'm going to apply these two together, but I don't get is Fred, let me guess, Fred's the ITSM engineering manager as well. But that's the idea though, is I can select multiple ones.
And obviously that works if you were to select Fred at the first one and then go to the assignment group and he had multiple, you could do the same action.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So this is going to try to find, yeah, so it's looking for any of, so I'll just, the other managers are there, but it just grays them out.
Right.
So
Yeah, and that
really
was
good
actually
question.
another question in the chat, and it said, "Can you hide the results not matching the filter so you don't see all the manager names?" For example, if you pick up a group, it's grayed out now. So I don't know, Marta, Olga, if there's any
Yeah.
plans to change that, but they're just grayed out at this point.
Yeah, the idea is to show users that something is hidden and the reason is so you don't get confused like, hey, where the rest of my manager, in case you forgot that you selected some other filter. So we just show it. And if you decided, hey, I actually want another manager, you can quickly remove the cascading filter and go select it. So that was the idea to grade out instead of hide. But yeah, if there's some feedback from the customers, please share.
Just to clarify, I believe I know the answer to this, but if we did something like the element filters at the breakdown source, does this dashboard does not follow that, does it? Or will it? To say that, let's say I put an element filter on the manager breakdown source to say only show managers that report to me, sort of thing.
You can configure, like if you edit the filter in the configuration, you can generally say show me only the filters. It's what you showed in the beginning, right? That you can configure in the configure values option under the filter source. You can choose like, hey, I generally I want to show, I only want to see for the specific business area or for the specific category if you make dashboard for the subset of users. So you don't have a noise and not related at all to the user's values. So that will limit it always. But for the, like if it's filtered by the cascading filter, then we just gray out.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So the idea is, the dynamic filters to me is one of the most important parts of this. We've had sessions where we talk about creating dynamic filters and that, but there is a pretty good list out of the box, but you can add to this list as well. So in this case now I am the sysadmin. Because I'm sysadmin, I'm not in any of the, it says I don't know what to do with that. So but that's a good question. That's a good scenario as well. Back into this and get rid of my condition. All right. We've already kind of talked a little bit about multiple data sources, but I want to go into that in just a tiny bit more detail. Let's move this. I'm going to move this tab up here to kind of what my use cases were going to be. So I did the unified filters, did cascading filters, multiple data sources. So now let's say what I want to, on this, say that I've got this company filter that's been sitting out there. And so one of the things, so when I originally did this, when this was originally created, we didn't have the task table configured against any company filter, any of the company table. So any place that the company could be filtered, these are all like Acme companies here, it's not going to apply to any of the task-based filters here, but it does apply to my one filter that was just the CIs, just to show me what's the count of the CIs by class. In this case, for that, say if I have subordinate companies, or if it could be departments, business units, it could be really anything, really kind of any kind of structured data that you would have. So I can specify, so the other ones I was using the task table as kind of the nice little cheat code to say, give me all allow me to use this filter against any table that extends from task. That's pretty cool because that's going to be a significant amount of all the of all the data sources that you're going to want to filter. But in this case, there's a scenario where I am filtering by something other than the task table by default. And I can add any other table. I can add another table. I could add a different indicator source. I could just say, if I was just looking at indicators, are there any indicators? Yeah, there's a few. Notice there's a few of these indicators that actually do apply that company table. So I apply that. And so now it's going to say apply the company filter to indicators that actually have the company breakdown defined. So that's the thing to keep in mind, is with performance analytics, it's still the same back end for performance analytics that we've had all along. So you still need to define what your breakdowns are going to be for the data collection. So I need to predefine my breakdowns, what fields I'm breaking down by, and then run my data collections. But by doing this, it's going to try to now apply any company that I select. Oh, let's select the right field. Now, quick question, just to see who's paying attention here. You notice that the filter is applied to many of these, but there's a couple of them it did not apply to. Does anyone in the chat have a quick note to kind of make why I'm not seeing it on this open incidents real time or on my backlog growth? See if anyone's got it in here. And if no one answers, yeah, it's missing the apply to the hierarchy, not under tasks, no incidents for the company. Yeah, these are all really good. And I'm thank you guys for the different answers, because the neat thing is that interactive filters, the concept is still there, but it really isn't limited. So yeah, it was the Dayu had it said, I think, the not under task. So if I go back and look at this filter, this filter configuration, it's very literal. It's saying I can only filter data visualizations that use the configuration item table or is a predefined indicator that uses the company breakdown. So if I wanted to include the other ones, it could be incidents, it could be any of them. This is where I would have to go in and say, I do want to select my task table. I think there was a company. Yeah. So those are all good guesses, because that applied hierarchy is a very important concept here. But in this case, it's not going to actually matter that as much. Well, this case it will, because these are all extended tables. But the main thing is I had to create a data to filter option that was based upon task, or I could have gone into these individual or I could have gone into the individual tables like incident, problem, change. So now when I apply it, it's still actually, I think what I want to say is these are indicators that do not have the company breakdown assigned to them. So the workload backlog growth is an indicator-based data visualization. So it's that's the data sources are coming from indicators. However, those particular indicators don't have the company table applied to it. So that's again why we keep doing this icon to say what is or is not what filters are or are not applied. So when I click on it, it's going to tell me, yeah, company is not applied. So that's it. So I would need to go into, let's see, what's the work? It's the new closed of each of these. So what I usually do on this is I'll do the drill down like I would on any other, for any indicator, and I'll take a look at the info button, and it'll tell me, oh, okay, this is a formula. New workload is a formula that's just combining the new incidents, new problems, new changes. So what I would need to do is I'd need to make sure that that company breakdown is applied to each one of these, the number of new incidents, the number of new problems, the number of new changes, and the new workload. So all of those to say that, if I have that breakdown applied to every single one of them, because right now, if I look at new, yep, you see here, just under the new workload itself, I don't have the company specified there. And I could drill into the other ones too if I really, just to kind of check to see if I've done the same thing. Do I have a company available? I do for a number of new incidents. That's available already. And as I can see by drilling into it, it is actually doing it properly. It's telling me what for just the number of new incidents. So in this is a good example of when I need to make sure that I apply the breakdown at all levels if I'm using a formula. Okay. Good questions on that. Other questions on just this whole idea of the multiple data sets, multiple sources. What do you guys got a raised hand? Silver, do you yeah, so could
Yeah,
someone
I'll unmute him.
unmute Silver? See what?
Go ahead, Silver. You should be able to talk.
Yeah. So the cascading filters, one of the first use cases that we had for it was like, hey, we want to see who the story is assigned to or who these incidents are assigned to, but we want to be able to change the assigned to filter based off of the assignment group. Because the filters kind of automatically go up to the higher level, right? If you choose the assignment group, it's like, all right, well, I want to go to the assist user group table instead of staying on the stories table. That relationship doesn't seem to exist. And so I'm just trying to understand on the many to many filters, is that going to be possible? Is that something that's coming, or is it just that type of relationship not feasible with that?
I am pretty sure it is. I'm not, because it really is. Let's see if I wanted to do.
Yeah, because what happens when we do that for assignment group or project manager or any of that stuff is that it will say that there are filters it cannot follow, and then list the if the user field will list it can't follow the group field because they're not related, even though they should be.
So let's say I want this to be a user, but I want it to be the assigned to person. I usually do the label first, and so I'm going to bring this one back up into my header area, and now in this case, this is the many to many because actually the assignment group is just going to have a limit. It's just going to have a specific number of users. But if I choose a user, if I choose, will the assignment group let me do that? And yeah. So, and yours is based upon, it's not the exact same scenario. So I'm trying to keep in mind here. I'm trying to think about because it's in stories, and on the story, I don't know the story fields as well. So off the top of my head, you're working with, is there an assignment? Is there a group on the story and the assigned to on the story?
Yes.
Or is there something else that we're looking at there? Yeah,
That's
because
correct.
I should be able to do this. I should be able to use this.
I mean, yeah, like for me, the filters with table connection never populates for those. Like it'll always just be two filters cannot be followed. Like if I were to have that behavior, what you're having there, that would be wonderful. And the only way that I ever was able to get something to work is if I went to like, if I was filtering off of the group members in groups table instead of using the actual groups table.
Okay, so yeah, so in this it'd be changing this table.
Hmm.
Yeah,
But most users and even some developers are not going to know that kind of back-end relationship, which is why.
no. So yeah, unfortunately, I think we'd have to really look at that specific one. That might be a good one if you are
Yep,
willing to, post to put on the community. And if
sure.
you want to tag Thomas and I or any of those, if you'll see how we can try to take a look at that one specifically just to see if we can dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll see if I can reproduce it a few different ways and then get it
Yeah,
submitted.
because it should be able to.
That was my
And
assumption. So if that's the expectation, I'm glad to report it.
right, yeah. So I have my group. And now should be limited my assignees. It's taking a moment to load here to just the people that are members of that particular group. So it's yeah, so it should be able to do all that. Okay. I know we're just right up at the top of the hour here. So if there's any other remaining questions that we can answer live, or are we ready to do it or ready to wrap up?
I mean, there are three here. One is directly at Marta, maybe a follow-up to something that she was working on. Let's see. We have a non-filter question. I don't know if we can get to that. Let's see. It's
We do have a
12:59
guest that
here.
raised their hand too. Actually, I will lower.
We can allow the one more the guest here to talk, and then we'll finish up with that one. So let's see.
All right.
I don't even want to try to pronounce that name. I'm afraid I'll mess it up so bad.
CE Zoelli,
Yeah.
something like that. Okay, you are available to talk if you would like to with the person who raised their hand.
Z-E Swelly?
Or
Zwelly?
and it's not unheard of that people will raise their hand accidentally as well. So
Yeah.
okay,
Okay,
it's
so maybe not. So
yep. All right.
we will go ahead and close this out, and there we go. All right. You can see I'm sharing now, right?
Yep.
Somebody
Yes.
tell me yes, no? Yep.
Yes. Yep.
Good. All right. Thank you. All right. So thank you, Dan. Really great session. A lot of questions. If we didn't get to answer your question, we'll try to make sure that we add that into the community as well. So really great stuff. Really great questions. I mean, almost 70 questions is awesome. And like I said, all of those questions will be in the community as well. And the questions really go far in helping both outbound and inbound, which are people both that are on this call, to help make things in the product better. So thank you for those questions. So as usual, make sure that you always remember the community. This great stuff out there. Our sessions as well are out there on our community page. Make sure you're utilizing Now Learning, which is getting better all the time. More sessions are being added. Again, I always show this. This is for platform analytics. If you're new to it and there are things that you want to learn, this is a really great tool for you to use that, our enablement toolkit. And it also gives you the ability to use this to train the people within your organization. So we provide the PowerPoints as well. There will not be a session in 2 weeks on the Wednesday prior to Thanksgiving for the United States here. So enjoy that time off. After that, we will round out the year on December 11th, where we'll kind of go through all of the academies that we have had for the 2024 year. It's crazy to think that we're already at the end of that or very close to that. So we'll have that on December 11th, and that will be the last session of 2024, and then we'll pick back up in January. So again, thank you, Dan, for great content, great presentation. Thank you to the panelists that were able to join and answer questions. We really appreciate that, and we'll see everybody, which will be in a month. So enjoy the holidays in the next 2 weeks. Thank you, and have a great day. Olga, I'll let you finish typing that answer before I close the screen. Oh, she's good. So, all right. Thank you very much.